Good morning, everyone. Here's your Mormon news update for June 10th, 2024. It's Trek season, and in an article from Blythewood Online in South Carolina, it says approximately 100 students from Blythewood, Fairfield County, and surrounding areas who are Mormons will participate this week in a trek, simulating a trip on foot that members of the church made across the country in 1848 to reach the Utah Valley. The students will push and pull hand carts dressed in period clothing and with all their belongings in a 5-gallon bucket. For 3 days, they will trek 10 miles across and around Farewell Farm, a 200-acre horse farm in Blythewood. The farm is owned by church member Joyce Hampton Hill. The students will depart from the corner of Old Birch and Persimmon Fork Roads at noon on Thursday, June 13th, and will finish at noon on Saturday. The students are divided into family units carrying pretend babies who represented and were named after actual babies who made the trip with their families. At the end of the trek, those dolls representing real babies who died on the long ago journey will be buried in a solemn funeral ceremony near the temple the students erected. The symbolic trek is organized every 4 years so that every LDS student makes the trek during high school. As a Mormon teen, I never actually had the pleasure of going on trek. I did attend girls' camp and youth conference, but I didn't get to push hand carts across the Utah desert. I did find this interesting article on byu.edu that references trek, though. The final stanza of the Mormon pioneer anthem, Come, Come, Ye Saints, directly confronts the prospect of dying on the trail. And should we die before our journey's through? Now, new research shows that pioneer mortality rates were not much greater than national averages at the time. This may come as a surprise to modern Mormon youth who've participated in handcart treks. The youth go out and learn that a lot of people died, and they push the handcart, and after 3 days, they think they are practically dead, said retired historian Mel Bashori. But most people traveled in wagons to Utah. Bashori worked with a team of actuarial scientists at Brigham Young University to analyze 56,000 pioneer records from 1847 to 1868. Of these 56,000, there were an estimated 1,900 people who died, either on the plains or within the calendar year of their arrival. That's about a 3.5% mortality rate, whereas a national comparison group in 1850 experienced an annual mortality rate between 2.5% and 2.9%. That was really interesting to me because all the pioneer stories that I was told in church growing up and at girls' camp and youth conference were presented as stories of great sacrifice and great tribulation. Now, I'm not saying the pioneers didn't experience that, but it seems that not as many died as I had previously imagined. The article goes on to say, consulting pioneer journals and family histories, Mel Bashori and Dennis Tolley worked with 8 BYU students to confirm how many people came over and how many died along the way. Many of those who died suffered from illnesses common to the time period, such as cholera and dysentery. There were also considerable risks from some form of accident along the immigration trail, such as being run over by a wagon, stampeded, or accidentally shot. Only 4 deaths reported were from Native Americans, 2 were eaten by wolves, 2 suffered a poisonous bite or scorpion sting, and 1 was intentionally unalived. The pioneers' mode of travel proved a major factor. Those traveling by wagon saw a mortality rate of 3.5%, but the mortality rate for the roughly 3,000 who traveled by handcart was higher. The ill-fated William Martin companies suffered a 16.5% mortality rate. These 2 handcart companies left in late July of 1856. And this late departure date led to these companies experiencing many hardships in the winter months, with the eventual need for rescue wagons sent from Salt Lake. Since this story is told so often, there's a perception that such hardship was the norm. That's the perception that I had. Yet just 5% of Mormon immigrants traveled by handcart. Of those, 1,000 belonged to the William Martin handcart companies. Not counting the William Martin companies, pioneers who traveled by handcart experienced a 4.7% mortality rate. I think part of the reason that it was made out that the pioneers fared so poorly was so that I would feel shame if I didn't keep the covenants that they traveled all the way across the plains to practice. Back to the article, interestingly, almost half of the immigrants were under the age of 20, and the mortality rate for this age demographic was a surprisingly low 1.75%. For some reason, pioneer babies fared better than expected on the trail given infant mortality rates at the time. Tully isn't certain about the cause, but one possible explanation is that some expectant mothers chose to wait and make the journey after a successful delivery. Statistical tabulations of data gathered from records and diaries do not illustrate the difficulties, perils, and miracles experienced by the pioneers, the study authors write. Though we cannot pretend to understand such trials and blessings from the tables and figures presented here, surveying many journals and gathering these data has presented sketches of the trials and tender mercies of the Lord. There have been some fatalities during modern trek, though. In 2016, a 29-year-old mother of two died during a church trek reenacting the Mormon pioneer Exodus West. Megan Lee Query Blair of Rogers, Arkansas began to experience problems near the end of a 7-mile hike through 95-degree heat on the first day of trek. She received immediate care and was transported by helicopter to a hospital in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where she died. And in a 2008 article, it says, in central Utah, a teenage girl from Tropic, Utah was killed along with the founder of the Castle Valley pageant. 12 people had just set out for what was supposed to be a week-long pioneer-era trek. They started in Fairview and planned to arrive in Castledale on Saturday, but after less than a mile, tragedy struck along the highway. Montel Seeley shared his passion for the Mormon pioneers with KSL's John Holenhorst last year. Not only was he the founder of the Castle Valley pageant, the 74-year-old was well experienced in pioneer treks. This morning, Seeley was leading a group of 3 families on a week-long reenactment to Castle Valley. His daughter, Leanne Seeley, said it was to commemorate the fact that this group of pioneers came from Sanpete Valley in the 1870s and settled all the towns and communities over in Emery County. Just 10 minutes after leaving their camp, a pickup truck struck them from behind. Trooper Cameron Roden of the Utah Valley Highway Patrol said 14-year-old Hannah Wagstaff was behind the handcart walking and was struck by the vehicle. The vehicle then veered to the left where it struck a 74-year-old male who saw the vehicle coming and was trying to flag down the driver to get his attention to stop. When he was struck and killed as well, both died on the scene. Next up, from an article in the Post-Journal in Jamestown, New York, entitled Local Congregation to Counter Misconceptions, local members of the Jamestown denomination of the Mormon Church beg to differ. Instead of secrecy, they prefer to be an open book of sorts. Instead of exclusion, the church embraces inclusion. Whereas some people may peddle rumors and biased opinions, the church's leadership team prefers open, frank, and straight talk and reciprocal dialogue. We're a Christian church, said Sam Ognebeen, stake clerk of the Jamestown, New York stake. It's right in our name, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We don't worship Joseph Smith, Moroni, or the Book of Mormon. We worship God the Father and his Son, Jesus Christ. The church does not support plural marriage, nor do we discriminate. I think Sam is forgetting about the canonized scripture in Doctrine and Covenants 132. Let's just read verse 61. And again, as pertaining to the law of the priesthood, if any man espouse a virgin, and desire to espouse another, and the first give her consent, and if he espouse the second, and they are virgins, and have vowed to no other man, then is he justified. He cannot commit adultery, for they are given unto him, for he cannot commit adultery with that belongeth unto him, and to no one else. Let's also remember that the current prophet of the Mormon Church, Russell Nelson, is sealed to his first wife, Dancel, and his current wife, Wendy, and according to Mormon doctrine, believes that in the afterlife, he will live with them polygamously for eternity. Back to the article, according to churchofjesuschrist.org, the Latter-day Saints are a non-Trinitarian restorationist Christian denomination that is headquartered in Salt Lake City, Utah, and has more than 17 million members worldwide. Currently, the church has more than 99,000 volunteer missionaries and is ranked as the 4th largest Christian denomination in the United States. Moreover, the church encourages the tithing of 10% of members' income and requires that its members abstain from using tobacco, alcohol, coffee, and tea, and the observance of Sabbath day restrictions on recreation and shopping. Culturally, the church has an unfavorable opinion on piercings and tattoos, and the church counsels against the use of crosses as symbols of worship. We don't use crosses in any of our temples or churches, said Seth Carter, the church's Erie Ward second counselor. Jesus defeated death, and the cross is a symbol of death and suffering. We worship the risen Christ. There has been a rash of television and cable programming revolving around the Latter-day Saints during the last 7 years, specifically programming that highlights the act of polygamy. Sister Wives, Big Love, My 5 Wives, and Seeking Sister Wives are just a few of the entertainment shows produced regarding polygamy and the spin-off branches from the LDS, something to which the local Latter-day Saints refuse to watch and lend any creed to. It's garbage, said Carter. Smut sells. We don't watch it, and we don't support it. Yes, polygamy was part of our past, however, the church officially disbanded its practice in the late 1800s. I'll just refer you to my earlier statement on that one. The article goes on to say the church not only performs acts of charity for non-church members, but also has several other programs which we provide for people free of charge, said Ognebeen. All humanitarian projects are funded by donations from church members and others. 100% of these donations go directly to help the poor and the needy. To which I will add, except of course those percentages that went towards building a shopping mall and bailing out Beneficial Life, a failing insurance company, and the excess tithing that now makes up the billion-dollar investment fund Ensign Peak Advisors that the church runs. Now we will head to Brentwood, California, where police are investigating after a Brentwood Mormon church was vandalized with graffiti, making politically charged claims about where the church invests its money. One of the messages said, "Your tithes take lives." The incident happened Wednesday night at the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints near the area of Highland Way and Sand Creek Road. Cleaners were brought in to remove graffiti from the building on Thursday. "It's just sad to see action being taken to churches that are just there to worship," said Brentwood resident Derek Rossi, who is also a member of the church. Rossi added that fellow members are disappointed over the church being defaced. The suspects never got inside but did manage to break 2 windows. Rossi said he is glad church officials took action after members like himself reached out to the bishop to get the graffiti removed, before members attended sacrament meeting on Sunday. And last up today, in Independence, Ohio, a dream is coming true. A new temple for the Mormons will soon arise in Independence. The temple, which will boast a 100-foot-tall spire, will be the second in Ohio for the church. Sited on Brecksville Road next to the Cleveland Cavaliers facility, the 9,900 square foot temple was announced in 2020. The groundbreaking ceremony took place June 1st. The new temple will sit just 20 miles from the historic site of the church's first ever temple in Kirtland, which was dedicated in 1836 and has recently been bought back by the church as a historic but not serving venue. Independence's new temple will be the only operating site in Northeast Ohio, with another temple open in Columbus and a third announced for Cincinnati. One church elder said, "I visited the site here in January and I felt impressed that once construction begins here, many will drive by and be curious about the building and what it represents. So I felt strongly that I should include that in the dedicatory prayer, that they will be led to and ask those questions of the right people who will be able to help them to understand the sacredness of the temple and the tremendous love their Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ have for them. When the temple is completed, it will host a weeks-long open house to welcome non-members and neighbors to visit and ask questions about the church." And that's your update for today, folks. I'm sure you noticed I'm broadcasting from a different location because I'm on vacation. I'm having a wonderful time, and I absolutely hope that you have the day that you deserve.